Round two. I can't remember what I was talking about now. Hopefully the first little bit of the video is there, and I will get on with this. But hi to those who joined. Just having a little bit of an internet issue. It's dropping out, so hopefully it will stay. So today I'm going to be talking about environmental toxins. I'm going to be talking about how they contribute to estrogen dominance. In particular, I'm going to be talking about copper, BPA, the oral contraceptive pill Candida, and how they kind of all relate together. Now, copper toxicity is actually pretty common, and it's common because one, I'll go into the estrogen part of it, of why it's common. But copper, generally we have copper. There's lots of copper in pesticides. There's lots of copper in fungicides. There's also copper in the environment, and there's also copper coming from copper pipes and fluoride. There is a theory that fluoride actually causes a bit more leaching of the copper, so it causes the copper to build up. Now, we do want some copper in our body, so copper supports our energy levels. It actually supports our red blood cells, and it supports our ferritin, our iron stores. It supports immune system, it helps with our hair color. So copper has lots of good functions, but the problem is when copper gets too high, we then have an issue with low zinc, and it suppresses zinc, and what that leads to is that leads to other toxins to actually become high. So with excess copper, what's interesting with excess copper, and some of you may have heard of this Peyronie's condition, is they're very much interlinked, which means that maybe excess estrogen is also interlinked to some of these childhood issues like hyperactivity, ADHD, because excess copper, we've got hyperactivity, we've got ADHD, we've got autism, skin sensitivity to hard things, anger, irritability, sleep problems, poor concentration, depression, and also difficulty making and synthesizing our own neurotransmitters, particularly dopamine and particularly serotonin. So this can happen when copper comes too high and our body detoxes copper via the bile. And if we have excess estrogen, the estrogen causes a retention of the copper. This is where the oral contraceptive pill comes in, because the oral contraceptive pill by nature is usually a synthetic estrogen, estradiol, but it can also be a progesterone, a synthetic progesterone, but I'm going to focus on the estrogen. One of the symptoms of copper toxicity, and a lot of you might be able to relate to this, is actually being sensitive to the oral contraceptive pill. So some women are sensitive, they take the oral contraceptive pill, and they get hyperactive or they get anxious, they get extremely moody, mood swings, insomnia, all of those kind of symptoms. So you need to look out for that. Definitely sensitivity to the oral contraception pill can mean there is an underlying copper issue. So what happens is you have the oral contraceptive pill, that gives your body that more estrogen bump, and then that causes that copper retention. Once we get the copper retention, we're then going to be left with copper deposits around the body, normally in the brain. It can also be in the liver and gallbladder. This is where the problem starts with detoxification. The detoxification process is then inhibited, and we're unable to detoxify. We're unable to detoxify other heavy metals, and the gallbladder then starts to slow down in its process. The bile then starts to get sticky, and this is why women who have been on long-term oral contraceptive pill do get liver and gallbladder issues, and there is a pattern there. Because of this retention of copper, we then have low zinc. We also have low B vitamins, B1, B2, and B6 in particular, that have vital roles in the detoxification of heavy metals and hormones, and things like fungi, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment in terms of the detoxification process. So once we get this estrogen dominance, either through external estrogen such as BPA, which I'll talk about in a moment, or the oral contraceptive pill, we then start to get this copper rise. And copper and estrogen have similar effects on the body, and they work alongside each other. So normally when you have that estrogen dominance, you also have this copper dominance as well. And then the copper dominance both start to slow down the detoxification system, and what then happens is you get a metabolite, you get the estrogen metabolite that's unfavorable. So these estrogen metabolites are quite inflammatory, they can lead to cancer. And so this is this whole trigger and this line of event of things, and why this copper zinc balance is so very important. You can test copper, so you can test copper doing a hair mineral analysis test. You can do urine and blood. The hair mineral analysis test is normally pretty good for tissue copper, just having a look at what's going on. When you get urine, that's usually what's in your body is excreting, it's coming out through your urine, so that's quite an acute buildup. And blood is even more acute. So tissue during your hair will give you an idea of what's going on in your tissue. But this is one of the theories, and this is one of the connection with women and Alzheimer's later in life, that this top copper buildup on the brain does cause issues with the connectivity, the electrical currents in the brain, and that can lead to Alzheimer's. So I haven't looked at the studies in terms of estrogen dominance, but we know that, say, women that get glaucoma when they're older are more likely to have estrogen dominant conditions and maybe even breast cancer. There is a connection there. So it'd be interesting to look at Alzheimer's and those other estrogen dominant conditions as well. So you have this high estrogen, you have this high copper, you then have these low nutrients, the Bs and the zinc, and your body is then struggling to detoxify. The liver and the gallbladder are struggling. You need that bile. The bile is one of the most important things to bring heavy metals out of the body. They can have to come out through the bile. They can come out with some sauna work, infrared sauna, sweating it out, but predominantly you want them to come out in your bowel motions in the bile. So this starts to build up, and this vicious cycle of estrogen dominance, and then it gets to a place where it's really hard to treat because it's gone on for so long. What then happens? So even though copper is used in fungicides, when we have this buildup of copper in our body, it creates this kind of perfect storm and this perfect environment to feed Candida. And so the copper allows the Candida to be fed. The immune system is suppressed because it doesn't have the nutrients it needs to fight things like bacteria, parasites, and Candida. And then you get these cyclic Candida flare-ups. Now, some women have them more often. Some women have the Candida all month long, but other women, when the estrogen rises, they have these Candida flare-ups, and that normally manifests in thrush. It can manifest on the mouth, it can manifest on the skin, the scalp, yeasty, smelly infections, or discharge, vaginal discharge. And that is that Candida. It can also be wind, bloating, smelly wind, itchy anus, those kind of symptoms with Candida. And so you get this perfect environment. And what happens then is you've got the yeast, you've got the Candida, and the tricky thing now is that Candida starts to produce estrogens in the gut. I was going to say butt, maybe the butt as well, but in the gut. And so you've got estrogen feeding Candida, you've got copper creating this perfect storm, and then you've got Candida producing estrogen. So you've got this whole vicious cycle going on, and it's really hard to get on top of. But this is why tomorrow I'm going to be talking about liver and gallbladder, because it is your liver and gallbladder where you really need to focus. And so you have this kind of perfect storm, and all your excretory systems are a little bit depressed. They're not working as effectively because you've got the bile slowing down, the gallbladder slowing down. And so that means when you're exposed to other toxins, you're more likely to be sensitive to them. You're more likely to have allergic reactions. You're more likely to have nausea or headaches whenever you're exposed to toxins, wherever you're exposed to pesticides, to fungicides, to herbicides, toxins in paint. And one important one is BPA, because BPA is in plastics, and BPA is very important when it comes to our hormones because it affects so many different hormone pathways in our body. And once our body's detoxification system slows down, it's even more difficult for us to process BPA and get rid of it out of our body. Microplastics, so it's there kind of all the time, and in shoes, from rubber, those kind of things. So it's in bottles, and we are exposed to a lot of BPA. Now, BPA either mimics or it interferes with the actions of hormones. So we see it working in a number of different ways. It can mimic estrogen. So it can mimic estrogen and cause estrogen conditions. So dominant cancers, endometriosis, weight gain, all of those kind of conditions, so it can mimic. But another thing that it can do is it can block and disrupt feedback, negative and positive feedback. So the way our hormones work is the pituitary gland produces these pre-hormones, and these pre-hormones then go to the ovaries, or they go to the adrenals, or they go to your thyroid gland, and that creates those hormones. And our body relies on this really innate system of the pituitary going, yes, produce, no, produce, and it's this beautiful feedback. The tricky things about BPA is they interfere with these processes. So you end up not only estrogen dominant, and this is the connection here, you not only end up estrogen dominant, but you normally end up with issues with your thyroid. So you're estrogen dominant, and then you might end up with hyperthyroidism or hypothyroid symptoms, because you've got BPA, you've got your system slowing down, your body not able to detox, you've got BPA then causing problems in building up. That will block your thyroid. It also mimics the estrogen. When it's mimicking estrogen, it's also potentiating your copper, because don't forget, estrogen and copper work hand in hand, so they're potentiating one another. And then next and lastly, it blocks. So the darn BPA blocks receptors. So it might block, say, your progesterone receptors, and progesterone is your relaxing hormone. It supports your metabolism, it supports your thyroid, it makes you feel good. So you've got all these three actions happening with BPA. And it's really difficult to get on top of that, because you can see how there's lots of difference. We've not only got the external toxins coming in, we've got the external toxins now mimicking our hormones, but then we've also got this byproduct, which are called endotoxins, and these are the byproducts of Candida. And these endotoxins also, one, they clog up our liver and our gallbladder and our digestive system, and two, they actually cause food, and they can cause more estrogen and more hormone metabolites. So it's this kind of vicious storm, and I wanted to describe it like that because I wanted you to understand how sometimes it can be really difficult. And one of the things I do get asked a lot, or I do get clients come to me, is I've tried this, and it's just not working. And so sometimes it takes more of this specific approach and different body systems for a longer period of time. So sometimes it can be really simple, but if you've gone for a long time, say on the oral contraceptive pill, or you've been estrogen dominant for 20 years and the gallbladder is really under functioning, it's going to take a bit to get that gallbladder working, to get that liver working. And it's not until that's working that your bowel gets clean, and it's not until that you start to then detox. Then once you've detoxed, the hormones can then restart to rebalance themselves. But it's a process. It really is a process. And one of the other tricky things is when we're exposed to all of these toxins, exotoxins and endotoxins, some of them are detoxed the same way. So we've got glucuronidation. Let me start. We've got in terms of detoxification, we've got all these different systems. Now, hormone metabolites, fungal toxins, and BPA are all detox via the same pathway. So that same pathway has to do everything. The phase 2 liver detoxification, the glucuronidation and the sulfation, they all have to detox that. And not only that, but they have to detox other day-to-day things. So if you're taking medications, or if you're drinking alcohol, or if you're smoking cigarettes, other things that you're exposed to, those pathways in the liver also get have to produce more. They have to use your raw materials to detox more. So you can see, if you've got more exposure to toxins, or you drink, or you smoke, or you take numerous medication, that calls more for you to start supporting your liver, your bowel, and your gallbladder, so that you don't get that estrogen dominance. In terms of those phases, I have talked about that before, but I'm just going to quickly touch on it. When it comes to the phase 2, when we come to the sulfation, this is why a lot of naturopaths and nutritionists talk about sulfur-based food. So in terms of sulfation is a process of detoxification in the liver, and it needs kind of sulfur-based minerals, sulfur-based products, such as Epsom salt baths is very good. Sulfur-based foods like broccoli, Brussels, cauliflower, cabbage, eggs, leeks, onions, garlics, all of those are wonderful for sulfation. And then you need amino acids like choline, which is really difficult to come by. Choline is in eggs, and then also inositol and taurine and methionine. And then one mineral that's very, very low, and normally this is low when it comes to copper toxicity, is molybdenum. And molybdenum is very important for teeth health. And so with the copper toxicity and with estrogen dominance, you also get suppressed molybdenum, which is really hard to come by. And that can also cause a lot of cavity in the teeth, bleeding gums, demineralization of the teeth as well. So we can get a lot of mouth issues happening as well. So that's sulfation. And then we've got glucuronidation. Glucuronidation is another important pathway, and that detoxes your amines in your foods, hormones, your steroid hormones, and your hydrocarbons. So all these different toxins and hormones that we come into contact every single day. So glucuronidation, again, it is another process, and things like dill, green apples, caraway seeds help with this process. But normally this process is inhibited when there's any leaky gut, so any candida, any bacteria in the gut. It actually causes what's called beta glucuronidase buildup in the gut, and that's what can cause inflammation, that can cause mucus in the bowel motion, leaky gut. And then when we've got leaky gut, that can lead to elevated testosterone, estrogen dominance, and also thyroid suppression. So you can see how there is this kind of link to everything. But what I'm trying to focus on is the need to detox, and the need to focus on different phases in the liver, and the need to actually nourish your gallbladder. So when it comes to cleansing, the fundamental part is to make sure that you are supporting your liver and you're detoxing your gallbladder. And once you do that, once you get your gallbladder working, and if you don't have a gallbladder, we'll talk about that another time. Once you get your gallbladder working, and once you get that bile working, that will essentially go into the small intestine, and it will start to do its job, and it will move the fatty acids around. It will start to kill off the bacteria, it will start to kill off the fungi, and that will allow your immune system to rise. That will allow you the copper, and it will allow the estrogen to start processing and detoxing, and that's when your body will start to come back into harmony. So tomorrow, what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on, I've talked a lot about the problem today with detoxification, the problem with copper, the problem with the oral contraceptive pill, the issue that can cause with endotoxins like Candida. So tomorrow I want to focus on some strategies that you can do to support your liver and your gallbladder, because I think that's it's really needed, and it can be helpful for you. So tomorrow I'm going to be talking about the liver and the gallbladder, and just some simple things that you need to do and need to think of. And I have done a live before, and if you haven't got a gallbladder, but there is that connection between your gallbladder and estrogen dominance. It's one of the most important detoxifying systems to get that estrogen out of your body. So I hope that was helpful. I hope it highlighted the need for detoxification, and also what can be going on for those of you that are taking the oral contraceptive pill, and the impact it can have on your copper. The takeaway is, zinc is a very important nutrient to supplement with. Oysters, pepitas, and pine nuts have high zinc in, so it's important. Or you can take a supplement, but it's very, very important. And just be aware, if you do have children, or you know of children that do have issues with pyrroles, issues with hyperactivity, ADHD, and autism, don't think or don't assume if they're young that they don't have issues with estrogen. Look at the signs and symptoms, and you might actually be able to connect some dots and have a look at doing things for them, greens that help to support their liver, help to support their gallbladder, to actually clear estrogen as well. So that's an important part to this. Estrogen dominance can start in kids quite young, and we are being shown the signs as well when they are young. So I hope that was helpful. If you've got any questions, please pop them below. And tomorrow I'm going to be on talking about the liver and gallbladder, and really showing you some simple ways in which you can support your body to detox estrogen and to get those toxins and heavy metals under control. So have a great evening, ladies, and I'll talk to you then. Bye.